Did you know that Julius Caesar managed to get his revenge, even after he was dead? Yep. While his body was still warm, half the Senate was already rehearsing their apologies, and the other half was scrubbing blood off their togas. But the most shocking part: Caesar's revenge didn't come at the tip of a dagger. It came as a political masterstroke that would make even Don Corleone proud. Today, we're going to uncover how a murder that was supposed to save the Republic ended up burying it for good. Because the conspirators didn't count on a gladiator-level twist. The man dies, but his idea lives on. And in this case, it marches, conquers, and becomes an empire. This is a story of vengeance carefully executed by allies, legions, and yes, even lawyers packed with propaganda, strategic suicides, and speeches that turned into riots. It's got everything: disputed inheritance, shaky alliances, public outrage, and battles that play out like a game of chess, if the pieces had swords and grudges. And stick around until the end, because this tale doesn't just mark the end of the Roman Republic, it shows why in politics, it's not the most righteous who survives, it's the most prepared. The one who knows how to wait, manipulate, lie with charm, and if needed, cry at the right funeral. But for that revenge to happen, someone had to carry Caesar's name. And that someone was a scrawny teenager with back pain. Imagine this: you're 18 years old, you've got chronic back pain, zero military experience, and the most powerful man in Rome, Julius Caesar, just died and left you everything. No pressure, right? That was Gaius Octavius in 44 BC. Fresh out of school, more familiar with scrolls than swords, and suddenly thrown into the middle of Rome's deadliest power vacuum. But here's the kicker: Caesar didn't just like the kid. He adopted him. In his will. Posthumously. That made Octavian not just his legal heir, but also, and this is the real jackpot, the new Caesar. Think of it like Skyrim. You're the Dragonborn, but you've never held a sword properly, and everyone's still stronger than you. So what do? You bluff. You lean hard on the title. You wear the armor, quote the prophecy, and hope no one notices you're still figuring out which end of the spear goes where. Octavian knew he couldn't beat his rivals through brute force. So he turned to what he did have: Caesar's name. Caesar wasn't just a family title anymore, it was branding. It was legitimacy. It was power in 3 syllables. And he used it like a modern influencer uses a blue checkmark. Vote for me, I'm Caesar's son. Lend me your army, Caesar would have wanted it. Trust me, I totally have what it takes to rule. Did he believe it himself? Maybe. But what mattered was that others believed it. The Senate underestimated him. So did the armies. But Octavian wasn't here to impress them. He was here to survive. And slowly, carefully, he started stacking allies like a political Pokemon deck. Not because he was strong, but because he was playing the long game. But Octavian wasn't going to carry out Caesar's revenge alone. Someone else was going to swing the sword, someone with way more fire in their eyes. If Octavian was the intern suddenly in charge of the empire's inbox, Mark Antony was the guy kicking down doors and asking who needed a reminder of Caesar's legacy. Antony wasn't just some random general, he was Caesar's guy. Loyal, battle-hardened, charismatic, and terrifying when he wanted to be. Think the last kingdom's Uhtred, but with more speeches and fewer shirts. When Caesar died, Antony didn't mourn in silence, he turned the funeral into a full-on political nuke. Seriously. The funeral oration? That was no eulogy. It was a spark in a powder keg. Antony pulled back Caesar's bloody toga in front of the Roman crowd, pointed at the wounds, and basically yelled, "Look what they did to our guy!" Boom. Riot. The Senate scrambled, the conspirators ran, and suddenly Antony was the man of the hour. But Antony wasn't just out for revenge, he was out for control. The problem? That awkward teenager named Octavian was technically Caesar's heir. So what do you do when you're the muscle, but the kid has the title? Easy. You team up. Begrudgingly. Enter the second triumvirate: Antony, Octavian, and Marcus Lepidus, who, let's be honest, is mostly here for the group project credit. Together, they formed a legally sanctioned dictatorship with one goal: hunt down Caesar's assassins and make the Republic pay for the blood it spilled. Antony became the enforcer, the sword of vengeance. He commanded legions, made strategic moves, and probably scared every senator within 10 miles. While Octavian built his image, Antony built an army. But revenge, as they say, isn't free. And their little trio needed cash. Lots of it. Armies don't feed themselves, and Roman politics runs on coin. So where do you find money fast? Well, how about taxing the richest people in Rome, even if they've never voted a day in their lives? You know that moment in The Handmaid's Tale when the women finally snap and say, "No more?" Ancient Rome had one of those. And it came with a toga and a mic drop. See, after forming the second triumvirate, Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus needed money. Fast. Armies had to be fed, bribed, moved. So they came up with a brilliant idea: let's tax the rich. But not just any rich, wealthy Roman women. And yes, the same women who weren't allowed to vote, hold office, or even speak in public assemblies. Classic. Their logic? You live in Rome, you have money, so pay up. But the women? They weren't having it. And leading the resistance was Hortensia, daughter of a legendary orator. Turns out, rhetorical genius runs in the family. She marched into the Forum, a place that wasn't exactly welcoming to female voices, and delivered a speech so sharp, you could have used it to slice through the triumvirate's budget. Her argument was simple. If we're not allowed to participate in government, why are we being forced to pay for its wars? It was Wakanda forever meets civil disobedience, with a Latin accent. She didn't ask. She demanded. The speech hit like thunder. Senators squirmed. Even the triumvirs blinked. The result? A partial retreat. The triumvirate scaled back the taxes on women and turned to other sources. Which, in Rome, probably meant confiscating property and declaring people traitors, until their assets conveniently disappeared. But the point was made. Hortensia's stand didn't just shake the regime, it reminded everyone that even in a system designed to silence them, voices could rise when it mattered most. Still, while Rome debated taxation and justice, the real threat wasn't in the Forum. It was far away, marching with an army. The conspirators weren't done. And they weren't planning to go quietly. So here's the plot twist. The villains of Caesar's story didn't think they were the villains. Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus weren't power-hungry maniacs. They were old-school Romans. Believers in the Republic, in shared power, in a Senate that meant something. In their heads, killing Caesar wasn't a crime, it was a sacrifice. They were saving Rome from tyranny. Or so they told themselves. Brutus, in particular, is basically the Batman of the story. Ethical, conflicted, tormented by what's right versus what's necessary. He was literally the poster child for Roman virtue, descended from the guy who overthrew Rome's last king. So imagine the pressure when you realize your mentor, your friend, the guy who trusts you completely, might be turning into the very thing your ancestors fought against. Cassius? Less conflicted, more practical. Less. What is justice? And more. This guy's gonna make himself king and we'll all be dead. He pushed Brutus into joining the conspiracy not just for moral support, but because Brutus gave the assassination credibility. If Brutus stabbed Caesar, then it had to be for the Republic, right? Wrong. Because killing Caesar turned out to be the easy part. What came next? Chaos. Riots. A funeral that backfired spectacularly. And suddenly, Brutus and Cassius weren't saviors. They were fugitives with armies. But they still believed in the cause. They escaped east, rallied legions, built a force that could, in theory, restore the Republic. And they weren't dumb. They knew Antony and Octavian were coming. They knew this would end in blood. What they didn't realize was that ideals don't block arrows. And speeches don't win wars. Because on the battlefield, things get messy fast. Hey, Discovers, real quick before we dive back in, I've got a small favor to ask. If you're the kind of person who loves a good story, the real ones, with epic battles, wild mysteries, unforgettable characters, and lessons that still echo today, then this channel is for you. Hit that subscribe button and join us as we explore history in a way that's curious, smart, and surprisingly fun. Because understanding the past has never been this interesting. Let's set the stage. It's 42 BCE. Two massive armies, two competing visions for Rome. On one side, Brutus and Cassius, the Republican Avengers, defending the old ways. On the other, Antony and Octavian, the heirs of Caesar, ready to crush anything that smells like a senate. Then, boom, battle. Now, most people imagine these ancient battles as grand choreographed war dances. But the truth? It was chaos. Mud screaming, dust clouds, and soldiers trying to tell friend from foe while not getting stabbed. And in this mess, Brutus actually wins. No, really. His forces outmaneuver Octavian's, who, fun fact, is apparently too sick to even be on the battlefield. Think of him as the general playing Age of Empires from bed while Brutus is out there swinging a sword in real life. But here's where it gets tragic. Cassius, Brutus' co-commander, is fighting on a different flank. He doesn't hear about Brutus' win. What he does hear is that things are falling apart. His scouts? Misinformed. His camp? Being raided. His conclusion? The cause is lost. So what does he do? He takes the Roman way out. Suicide. No dramatic speech, no final battle. Just one terrible misunderstanding and a dagger. All because no one updated the group chat. Brutus arrives too late, finds Cassius dead, and suddenly his victory feels more like a gut punch. The guy who helped him raise the army, plan the strategy, keep the dream alive, gone. And the worst part? There's no time to grieve. The armies are still facing each other. The war isn't over. The Republic? Still on the line. But now Brutus is alone at the top. And the weight of the entire Roman world? It just got a lot heavier. By now, Brutus is running out of options, and out of friends. Cassius is dead. The morale of the Republican troops? Shaky. And while Brutus is still that noble idealist fighting for the soul of Rome, ideals don't refill supply lines or win second rounds. Especially when you're up against Mark Antony, the guy who treats war like a sport he refuses to lose. The Second Battle of Philippi was basically the sequel no one wanted, except it ended the franchise. Brutus, pressed by dwindling resources and increasing pressure, makes a crucial mistake. He gives up high ground. In military terms, that's like trading your queen in chess just to take a pawn. Antony doesn't hesitate. He swoops in, takes the position, and flips the board. What followed was a collapse. Brutus' lines couldn't hold. His army began to scatter. The once righteous crusade to save the Republic? Now just another lost cause swallowed by the mud and blood of Macedonia. Brutus fled the battlefield, cornered by the brutal reality he had long feared, that maybe the Republic couldn't be saved. That maybe Caesar's ghost wasn't haunting Rome, maybe it was guiding it. And so, like Cassius before him, Brutus made the final call. But unlike Cassius, who died in confusion, Brutus died in clarity. He looked the end in the face and said something like, "Virtue is just a name. It has no power in this world." It's a moment straight out of Chernobyl, the grim, quiet realization that the truth you built your life on didn't survive contact with reality. With Brutus gone, so was the last serious resistance to Caesar's legacy. The Republic wasn't just defeated, it was erased. But here's the kicker, the man who truly benefited from all this carnage? Barely even fought. Remember Octavian? The sickly teen with back pain who inherited Caesar's name like a kid inheriting a lightsaber he doesn't know how to use. Well, plot twist, he wins. He didn't give the rousing funeral speech. He didn't crush Brutus in hand-to-hand combat. He didn't even fight that hard in Philippi. The guy was sick during the first battle and nearly irrelevant in the second. And yet, when the dust settled, it was Octavian who got the final word. Why? Because Octavian understood something Antony and the rest didn't, wars are won on the battlefield, but power is secured in the aftermath. While Antony was off swinging swords and collecting scars, Octavian was carefully shaping a narrative, one where he was Caesar's true heir, he was the avenger of Rome, and he was the man to restore order. He took the chaos of civil war and spun it into a heroic tale. Caesar was wronged, justice was served, and Rome needed a strong, moral guide to move forward. Guess who conveniently fit that mold? He didn't claim kingship, that was political suicide in Rome, but he slowly built power around himself. He took the credit, took the loyalty of the legions, and took the image of Caesar, and made it his. The name, Caesar, became less a surname and more a brand, a dynasty. And Octavian? He was now the CEO. Eventually, he'd be called Augustus. The first emperor. The guy who outlasted them all. The one who turned vengeance into vision, and bloodshed into bureaucracy. Succession? Mastered. Every rival gone, every threat neutralized. Not through strength of arms, but through patience, propaganda, and sheer political genius. But here's the deeper twist. In avenging Caesar, Octavian didn't just honor the man, he created a new world. One where the Republic was just a memory, and empire was the future. Because sometimes, the quietest ones at the funeral are the ones writing the next chapter. So let's take a step back. They stabbed Julius Caesar 23 times to save the Republic. But in doing so, they didn't just fail, they accelerated the very thing they feared most. In the end, Caesar was avenged. Brutally. Thoroughly. His killers died by their own hands, his name was immortalized, and the Republic they tried to preserve? Crushed under the very armies that claimed to restore it. Here's the paradox. They killed a dictator, and accidentally created an emperor. Not by design. Not with declarations. But slowly, subtly, through chaos, vengeance, and the vacuum of leadership. They handed Octavian the perfect storm, and he sailed straight into history. And no one saw it coming. Not because Octavian was invisible, but because he was underestimated. While others were swinging swords and making speeches, he was building something more durable than rhetoric or revolution, a system. A story. A state. By the time he became Augustus, there wasn't a republic left to revive. There was only Rome, unified, exhausted, and ready for someone to restore order, even if that meant sacrificing liberty. Sound familiar? It's a cycle older than empires and as modern as the next election. Fear drives control. Control demands power. And power rarely gives itself back. The murder of Caesar wasn't just a political act, it was the beginning of a transformation. A slow-motion shift from republic to empire. From shared power to absolute rule. From Brutus' dream to Augustus' reality. And the lesson? Sometimes, vengeance doesn't just destroy your enemy. It buries the very reason you were fighting in the first place. Like Michael Corleone said in The Godfather, "Look how they massacred my boy." Only this time, the boy came back. With an empire,